We look forward to chatting with Leader Cantor. Eric Cantor is a congressman from Virginia, majority leader of the Republicans of the United States. Welcome to North Dakota, Mr. Leader.
God, hi, Eric Cantor.
Welcome to North Dakota, Mr. Leader. How are you?
Oh, it is a great day in North Dakota. My first time in the state and getting an incredible tour here with Congressman Kevin Cramer, who is just a really, really enthusiastic booster for all things North Dakota. We've been out in the oil fields today, listening to the tremendous success of western North Dakota and the entire state as it contributes to our energy security.
What can North Dakota, based on what you've seen and heard about today, teach the rest of the nation about energy security?
Well, I will hope, and what I will do is take back to Washington the lessons learned here. And what I have witnessed here is a real partnership between the public and the private sectors. With a real difference, I think, that is obvious is that North Dakota values the private sector, the innovation, the technology that has allowed this tremendous production in the Bakken to go forward and has catapulted your state into number 2 position as far as oil production in the United States. A phenomenal, phenomenal success story that I think America should be proud of. And I will take this lesson back to Washington, and I actually want to invite, and I know that Kevin Cramer does too, to invite the president here to North Dakota to see the environmentally safe, the job-producing attitude that people of North Dakota have to care about our country in the way that they do to make sure we continue to lead as a people.
What do you see as the biggest threats? Is it the Obama administration and additional regulatory burdens from the EPA? Is it the Interior Department slow walking the permitting on the federal lands process? What are the biggest threats you're concerned about slowing this momentum?
Well, what I think is we've heard today and met with many of the industry players in North Dakota, many of the community leaders and working people in North Dakota today. And what we hear is experiences that some have had in the Bakken and the positive experience that it's had in terms of job creation, energy security, and they compare that to the experience that they've had in other states with other formations where the EPA and regulators don't share that commitment to a partnership of producing our fossil fuels, extracting the resources in an environmentally safe way, but having that can-do attitude. And so I do think that there's a tremendous threat from regulatory overreach out of Washington. We were told today of the enormous hurdles to exploration and production on federal lands, unlike that which happens on private lands, because of one difference. North Dakota regulators take a can-do attitude to work with folks in the private sector and do so in an environmentally safe way.
We have an international crisis right now with the question on how to respond to the chemical attack in Syria. Previous questions like this have surrounded oil, and there's a lot of discussion about already the price of oil spiking possibly up to $150 a barrel as a result of what's happening in Syria. I want to get your take on the national security side of this, because if there's more of the same of what we're doing here, you can be a little choosier on when to respond in situations like Syria, correct?
No question that if we continue and follow North Dakota's lead, if America would just follow North Dakota's lead in terms of energy production, we will change the outlook in terms of national security interest from foreign oil. There is no question about it. We have so much resources that we've been blessed with here in our country that we ought to take advantage of it from a national security standpoint, from a jobs and economic competitiveness standpoint. I think you have to sort of step back and ask the question, really, for those of us who are very concerned about making sure that we take care of our environmental resources. Who else will do it as environmentally safe as America? No one is as advanced or has the technology that can do it as safely, and that's why we ought to continue in the same vein that you are here in North Dakota.
I know you're just back from the Middle East. Congressman Cramer accompanied you on that trip, and obviously that brings the situation with a neighbor in Syria all that much closer. What do you think punishment should be for their chemical weapons attack, and should Congress have approval of any military action that does come?
Well, the president about a year ago has drew a red line and said that we would not tolerate the use of chemical weapons by the Assad regime. And as we have all seen these horrific images across the screen on television and the internet of young people, of women and men and others who have been killed by Assad and his brutality, this is what the president has said that America won't tolerate. So it is the president, his leadership, and credibility on the line. America is a global leader, and I know that Kevin Kramer and I heard that when we were in Israel, and we've also talked to other world leaders and regional leaders in the Middle East who have said that America is the leader we look to. Now, there are a lot of other interests in the Middle East that want to see the stop of the spread of militant Islam. And frankly, what we see going on in Syria is reflective of the instability that's being promoted by the radicals in Iran and by their proxies in Hezbollah and Hamas. America has a strong strategic interest in making sure that that kind of militancy, that kind of radicalism does not spread.
I want to give you a chance to weigh in on three other issues we hear about a lot from our listeners, which, for your benefit, is just the northern plains. It'd be North and South Dakota, Minnesota, Montana, and, of course, the Farm Bill is front and center. Congressman Colin Peterson represents folks in our listening audience. He's targeted you specifically, saying, hey, Eric Cantor is the reason we don't have a Farm Bill. He's putting poison pills in there, and, they're basically saying, Eric Cantor is the reason this thing is being held up. What do you say to that criticism that you're the holdup on the Farm Bill?
First of all, I'll say I am for the Farm Bill. I have voted for the Farm Bill twice. I would ask Colin Peterson to look to his leadership and ask that same question. It was a point made earlier today. The Democratic leadership has not joined us in trying to formulate a Farm Bill that we can see that goes forward. There's a real issue about the Farm Bill. 88% of the Farm Bill is food stamps right now. And what we've done in the House is we've said we have to proceed in an effort that makes fiscal sense, that says to our farmers, we're going to have the crop insurance that you need. It is a proper role for the federal government to afford that benefit. We're going to do so, but in a fiscally responsible manner when it gets to the question of the food stamp program. The nutrition program has more than doubled in the past 5 years. And I think that we as conservatives believe strongly you ought to have a safety net there for those who need it. But we also ought to take a look and say, if there are able-bodied people that are getting government benefits, we ought to have the ability for them to go back to work. We ought to provide the training. They ought to have the opportunity that the rest of us have. And this is the kind of transparent reform policy that we're about in the Farm Bill, together with the nutrition title. And this has been sort of the issue all along. We have in the House separated the two. We passed a Farm Bill out of the House, frankly, I would say again, without the support of the Democratic leadership. So we're going to forge ahead. We're going to get a Farm Bill. Kevin Kramer is leading on this issue. And I just want to thank him for allowing me the opportunity to talk with the farming community here in North Dakota today. We've had some very informative sessions. And I am taking back the lessons learned as far as what farmers need in North Dakota. And what the farmers have been telling me, the most important issue is that crop insurance provision in the Farm Bill.
How soon do you anticipate conferees will be appointed on the House side so you can get a conference committee to sit down and crank out that bill?
Well, the Speaker will make conference appointments. The House does anticipate passing the nutrition title and hopefully resolving this ASAP when we get back to Washington in September.
Well, another question we hear a lot from our audience: they want more fight, along the lines of what Mike Lee and Rand Paul and some of the strong voices in the Senate are pushing for. Ted Cruz on defunding of Obamacare. Where are you at on engaging in that battle yet again with a budget battle tied to defunding of Obamacare?
Listen, Obamacare passed without any Republican votes. All of us stand strongly against Obamacare, and as you know, in the House, we have passed what has been reported 40 times to do away with that law. We have to be smart about this fight because we need to win. We just don't want to fight for fight's sake. And what we're anticipating when we get back to Washington is a real push to do all we can to be successful at staving off the implementation of this entitlement. Because Obamacare, as we know, is not going to be the kind of health care that Americans want. It's providing a huge piece of uncertainty to our businesses and working families. And what we're going to do is aim to be successful, to delay the implementation of this bill. As you know, the president, even back in July, admitted the bill was so flawed that the mandates and taxes that were being imposed on employers delayed. The problem is the president then went and excused insurance companies from having to comply with the law. And you ask who's been left out. Who is left out are the working people of this country. And we as Republicans are going to stand up for the working families of this country and say, Mr. President, we've got to delay the mandates and taxes on them as well. It's only fair. This is a fight we can win. We all have got to stand together and win.
Final question on immigration. There is a great deal of concern that bottom line, folks smell a rat with the deal the Senate cut on immigration. Do you smell a rat, and what's the House going to do?
No question about it. The House will not take up the Senate bill on immigration. I would even suggest that when that bill passed and the umpteen number of pages, over 1,000 that it was, that there are some in the Senate who voted for it who didn't even know what was in it at the last minute because of the process that goes behind some type of comprehensive bill like that. We intend to be much more deliberative in the House. We intend to address the issue of illegal immigration and legal immigration. There are two separate issues there. We also are going to be balancing the needs of our agricultural community and the need for visas, the high-tech community. I know in Fargo that there is a tremendous employer in Fargo who is in need of the H-1B visas. We ought to be asking and inviting the foreign nationals who come to our country, who want to study, who get the advanced degrees and want to stay. We ought to have them here to stay because they're the ones who can help us create jobs and increase the opportunity here. We don't want them to return and take their venture capital with them. And as North Dakota knows, there's a lot of unfilled jobs in those areas. We've got to fix a broken system. We also, I think, we ought to be very pointed in our focus on the fairness of this issue. We ought not be treating those who acted illegal the same way as those who've been legal in trying to comply with the law. But we have an instance where there are children who were brought here as minors, and if they were brought here as 4 months old or 2 years or 5 years old, and they don't know any other country as home, we ought to be providing them an opportunity to allow for their life to flourish here. And I'm hopeful that the House can get behind that measure as well.
Last question. Last question. Are you confident you can get a bill that pleases conservatives who really right now are pushing for nothing to pass rather than a flawed bill?
Well, I think the conservatives don't want a flawed bill to pass, and to me, conservatives are for making sure we get the right policy. We're for conservative solutions. We're not for just saying no. And we are for making sure once and for all the federal government does its job at the border, does its job in enforcing the law. Because let's remember, the reason why so many people want to come here is because we have more opportunity than anyone else. That is because we are a country of laws. So first and foremost, we've got to maintain that commitment to being that country and upholding the law.
Leader Cantor, great to have you in North Dakota today. Thanks for seeing the Bakken up close.
Hey, it is a terrific story, and we're just rocking with the Bakken.
Rocking with the Bakken on what's on your mind today. Thanks for joining us. We appreciate it.